Commissioner, the next witness is Mr. Daniel Onas. Would please go to the witness box.
An oath, please.
Do you swear by Almighty God that the evidence you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please say I do.
I do.
What's your full name, please?
Daniel Onas.
You're here in your capacity as president of the AJAX Junior Football Club.
Correct.
You've made a statement dated 1 May 2026.
That's correct.
The contents of that statement true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
They are.
Commissioner, the doc ID is stat.8999.0036.0001_R. I tender the statement.
Yes, that will be Exhibit 1.66.
Mr. Onas, you're a Jewish Australian living with your family in Melbourne?
I am, yes.
AJAX Juniors is a club playing Australian rules football in Victoria.
That's correct, yes.
And AJAX is a member club of a broader league and organisation. Can you describe the structure
Sure.
of that, please?
So AJAX is a part of the SMJFL, the South Metro Junior Football League. The SMJFL is made up of 26 different clubs and over 10,000 participants. AJAX has been in its existence as a junior club for over 50 years, and we have over 750 members, players, a mix of boys and girls.
And the teams include kids from Jewish day schools, from government schools, from private schools? Right?
Yes, we represent kids across all schools, highly represented by kids that go to Jewish day schools, but also non-Jewish schools across Melbourne.
And the age range of the kids who play in the South Metro Junior Football League?
Yep.
What are they?
So players range from as young as under 8s, so 7-year-olds, all the way through to under 18s, so kids that are finishing their schooling in Year 12.
Thank you. In your statement you outline a regular series of anti-Semitic incidents that AJAX players have reported to the club over the last few football seasons. You say in paragraph 7 that since October 2023 the club has experienced an unprecedented increase in anti-Semitic incidents on and around the football field. Your statement gives a snapshot of formal reports of anti-Semitic incidents, which I'll ask you about in a minute. But you also indicate that the reported incidents aren't exhaustive of what occurs, and the ones that you set out in your tables in your statement are the ones formally reported to the club. I just want to get an idea of the other incidents. Well, I think you refer to them as on the day interventions. Could you describe that?
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, up until, as you said, October 7 in 2023, we had what I would say is a consistent low number of anti-Semitic incidences across a season, maybe 1, 2. In 2023 we had 3 incidences of anti-Semitic conduct. The incidences that we haven't included in our table, but as you say, resolved on the day, were events that, between team managers of the two clubs, we were able to address the issue and gain a level of comfort, both from our own players and parents and those of the opposition, that we were satisfied that we didn't need to take the event further. It's not to say that we didn't keep records of them or keep a track of those no less significant events, but that they were not what we considered needed taking further action.
So what kind of thing are you referring to?
They would still be anti-Semitic slurs said by an opposition player to one of our players, or particular references to being Jewish. that our players took offence to, or that parents on the sidelines may have heard. The role of the team manager in a game day for our club goes well beyond what it should, and certainly what a team manager would be expected to fulfil from a club other than AJAX, is to be aware of if and when those events occur in a game, to address them immediately with the opposition and try to seek a resolution on the day.
And I think you referred to another example of these on-the-day interventions that
Yes.
might be taken if there's conduct like players refusing to shake hands in circumstances where it's pretty clear they're doing that because they're playing a Jewish team or a team of
Yeah,
Jewish
certainly
players.
we've had experiences where that's occurred, when ordinarily even in our older age groups, teams will line up and shake hands at the end of the game. That has unfortunately on occasions not been the case, where particular players from a certain team would not want to do that.
You've highlighted in your statement 6 formally reported incidents for the 2024 football season. And then for the 2025 season, you indicate in your statement that you established a formal internal incident register to keep closer track of that, and you've highlighted 8 formally reported incidents from that season.
Yes.
Can I just ask you to address a couple of the examples of those incidents? So if you have your statement
Yes.
there in paragraph 10, you set out the table. Could you describe incident 2 as you've indicated in May 2024? What happened then?
So in this game involving one of our under 14 teams, so for context, that's made up of players that are generally 13 years of age, and for AJAX, that is footballers who have just been in their bar mitzvah year or had their bar mitzvahs, so a very significant year and milestone in their life. In that particular game, an opposition player asked one of our players if they were Jewish, and innocently enough the player responded that he was, to which the opposition player remarked, "Hitler should have finished you off." An extremely jarring and confronting remark for a young player to hear.
That was reported to the league that you play in, correct?
Yes.
And I'll ask you a little later in your evidence about that process of reporting and
Sure.
the response that you've received to that. Can I also ask you about incident 4 in the 2024 season that occurred in August 2024?
Yes, so in that game, involving under 12s, so an even younger age group, the opposition player remarked to our players, "Imagine being Jewish, F the Jews," after the siren of the game finishing.
And you described that as a game that was a final match, a finals
Yes, it
match.
was.
And also that it was witnessed by other members of the team, other 11-year-olds on the other.
Yeah, it was.
team.
It was witnessed by many. It was made without any provocation from our player at all. It was at a particularly challenging time with the game having immediately finished. And yes, as you say, multiple other players witnessed the comment being made and reported it.
And then the third and final example I'll ask you about from 2024 is incident 6, which you describe as the most serious of the documented formally reported incidents of that season. Could you explain to the Commissioner what happened in that instance?
In this game, this was an under-18 game, so we're talking about the oldest age group that our players participate in. This was a finals game. and there were several comments made towards our players. One player said to one of our players, "You effing Jews," directly to one of our players. Another player called a parent of our players who was attending the match a bloody Jew and a Jewish dog. We were collectively referred to in a separate slur as a bunch of Jewish dogs. And then one player attempted to remove the kippah from one of our players' heads, a religious player who bravely was, willing to wear his kippah during play, as many of our players still do and historically have, deliberately trying to intimidate and a physical demonstration of hate and anti-Semitism.
The offensiveness is obvious enough, but you describe in paragraph 33 of your statement a particular additional concern that you had with this particular incident. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, well, the game was a very emotionally charged game. It was a finals game. Football is, well known to be a very emotional, physical game, and so finals always bring additional levels of heat, shall I say. But the fact that in this game, the number of individual references and continued aggression shown towards our players was incredibly dehumanising, very, just very confronting for our players who really are there to try and win a game of football, trying to progress to a grand final. These are kids who would have spent that whole week thinking about what they're going to do in that game to get to the last game of the season, and instead of being able to focus on that, we're instead forced to deal with that level of abuse. And it actually spilt over, as I referenced, with one of the parents being targeted. Normally these incidences have largely been inside of the fence, but this took that to another level in terms of parent involvement, and the witnesses that were present on that day included the CEO of the Victorian CSG Community Security Group, who we engage with very regularly and have had to, unfortunately, since October 7 with regards to safety and security. He was acting as the umpire escort on that day in a volunteer role for the club. He witnessed those events and was part of the reporting process that followed.
I'll ask you a
Mr.
question
Lancaster,
or two about that.
just before you leave 2024, can I ask one further
Of course.
matter?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Yes.
there was an incident that you also recorded, which I appreciate is not of the severity of the last one, but in the under-14s game in
Yes.
May,
Yes.
at the handshake,
Yes.
one little 13-year-old came over and made a gesture at one of your players and said, "Free Palestine."
That's correct.
Do I take it the gesture was not friendly?
No, it was certainly not friendly, and this was, yes, as you say, at the end of the game when players should be shaking hands, saying "good game, well done." Instead, our player was greeted with that barrage.
For the 2025 season, your statements also set out a table of incidents. Can I just ask you about one of those from May 2025, the senior division incident that you've recorded in the table? Can you explain or describe what occurred in that instance?
Sorry, can I just clarify, because there are two open age ones. The second one?
Second entry in the table,
Yeah. So there was a reference to one of our players overheard opposition players saying, "Jew faggots must have paid the umpires." There were AJAX represented umpires in that game, which is often the case that we have players, young players, who are also acting as umpires as a job, and are often allocated randomly to AJAX games. And in this case, that was the reference that was made. Obviously a comment about the umpiring or result of the game, but was directly heard by our players.
So it's clear enough the incidents have included player-to-player abuse, but also of parents on the sideline and the umpires themselves.
That's right. That incident was referred to the league for investigation as well. Not all incidences are, but that one was.
In a later part of your statement, paragraph 52 and following, you describe the effect of these incidents that you've observed on young players and others who hear this kind of anti-Semitic abuse. What have you noticed about the effect on the young players?
The effect of this abuse, sustained abuse, particularly over the last two seasons, has been immense. Our players should be able to expect to turn up and play a game of sport, a game of football that they love, without having to deal with any sort of vilification. As a result of these incidences, we've had players from as young as 7 years of age targeted with anti-Semitism. That particular case, which we didn't go into detail, was one where a boy was told that because he was Jewish, the opposition team would be able to beat them. Now, can you imagine how a 7-year-old deals with something like that? The questions that they would have, that they would ask of their parents: why did he say that to me? Why is he saying that? What does that even mean? Very distressing. All these incidences have taken a really heavy toll on our players, young, old, and not just our players, but the processes often require them to give multiple statements, evidence, recounting what happened. It's a very difficult thing for young kids to have to endure. As I said, when really all they should be doing is playing football, and they carry that with them beyond just the Sunday games. It follows through to school. They have to be questioned about it, reflect on it, and what's even more terrible is then when the following Sunday comes along and the next game arrives, they're doubting, they're wondering what's going to happen this Sunday. What am I going to hear? What am I going to be presented with from the opposition? Do I want to play? Am I comfortable? Am I safe? These are all the things that our players have had to consider.
And the consequential impact on parents and the families of the players?
Yeah, equally so, potentially in some cases even more so. I mean, a role of the parent is to ensure that their children are safe, and for the 25 other clubs that play football in the SMJFL, this is not a consideration for them at all. Our parents, particularly the parents of the kids who have been victims of anti-Semitism, they've told us, they question whether it is safe for their kids to be playing football, whether it's safe for them to be training in a public space as a Jewish club. They've had to carry the burden of counselling their own kids, and even for those parents, the majority whose kids have not been targeted in these cases but are teammates or know of these incidents, they then needed to prepare their kids. Listen, you need to be prepared that an opposition player might try and target you because you're Jewish, try and get under your skin. They may not even know what it is they're saying. It might just be something that they've heard or seen on social media, but you need to be prepared that this might happen. So the parents and by extension the club and its administrators, it's borne a very heavy toll.
You also address the impact on club officials and volunteers, and this becomes particularly relevant when you describe the process of complaints that AJAX made to the league and the way that the league has dealt with it. So if you could first just describe the effect on club officials and volunteers, and then I'd ask you to just give a brief summary of the way that complaints to the league have been handled and what the outcome of that was.
Yep, certainly. So I would say that from 2024 onwards, post October 7, 2023, the club was well aware and prepared for what might come. We knew, with what we'd seen publicly with the rise of anti-Semitism, that as a football club we needed to be prepared to deal with that, and so part of our preparation in the off-season was to engage with CSG from a security point of view. We ran training sessions with our parents, players from the age of 13 up, around de-escalating situations that may arise, how to handle an in-game situation where anti-Semitism has occurred, whether it be verbal, physical, and the message that was given was that we want to de-escalate those situations. We don't want to add fuel and increase the danger and risk of things getting completely out of hand. So we put our entire club through that training and the preparation required from our committee and executive team to put all of that in place, and the time and the hours of the facilitators of those sessions was immense. Those are not conversations that parents and young footballers should be having. But they were things that we needed to do, and as we expected, and as you can see from my statement, those incidences followed in great number, and then the dealing with those incidences after the fact were exhausting, and by the end of the 2024 season, as evidenced by the letter that we wrote to the league, was we were just at our wits' end, in response to the amount of time and effort and energy and pain that we had to go through as a club to deal with the process of incident management, witness statements, communication with clubs back and forth. In 2024, the process was first to try and resolve the matter between the two clubs, which is a very arduous and difficult task, considering that the administrators of most clubs do not have an understanding of the complexities of anti-Semitism, and therefore don't have the ability to help deal or resolve those situations, as far as how to question their own players, how to treat sanctions, how to try to find ways to educate. So that burden fell entirely on our club, AJAX, and our incident managers, our parents' team managers, who are all involved in that process, week after week after week. 2024 averaged one incident per week over the course of the season. So you can imagine the impact of that on our volunteers.
And then you took complaints to the league. How was that dealt with?
So the process that was followed was that if we could not get a resolution between the two clubs, that a report would be filed and managed by the league. In 25, changes were made following the feedback that we gave following that incident that was discussed earlier in the under-17 game, where the 4 different anti-Semitic remarks were made, and that the process of club to club resolution was removed, and that incidences were referred directly to a private investigator, and that's how the majority of incidences were dealt with in 2025. The challenge that we've had throughout both those seasons is that, particularly in 2024, the burden was on AJAX to, find out and validate or prove that the remarks had been made. Clubs in certain cases, and in fairness, some clubs certainly did try to resolve and seek to understand what had happened, but if a player on the opposing side did not own up, or there was no person that the comment could be attributed to, then a lack of evidence meant that that particular incident could not be worked through to a sanction or to a proper resolution. So the process was still followed, and the league would follow its process to that point, but as you can imagine, not to our satisfaction. We were often not able to communicate back to our parents, who, obviously distressed and concerned and wanting to know the outcome. Part of being able to move on from these incidences is to be able to understand and know that, that player owned up to it. They received a suspension of X number of weeks. They agreed to participate in some sort of education, either at the Holocaust Museum or some sort of education that the club itself was willing to be a part of. But in many cases that didn't happen. 2025, we saw the league install a new, more robust vilification policy.
Refer to that as the updated vilification management process from May last year?
That's correct.
And have things improved under that process?
Yeah, we've been satisfied that the improvement has been evident, certainly from a process and procedural perspective, in terms of the club's ability to manage situations and incidences after the fact. The league reiterated its zero tolerance stance on vilification, although not specifically mentioning anti-Semitism. Reading between the lines, given the heightened situation since October 7, a large number of the incidents, a large percentage of the volume and administrative burden that the league had also felt as part of the volume of incidences, they sought to tighten things up and create a better process to deal with incidences.
Is that centralised management of issues by the league assisted in relieving the burden on club officials and volunteers from having to deal with these incidents week in, week out?
It's certainly improved it. It has. I mean, the ability to have the incident referred directly to the private investigator takes a lot of the legwork away from the club. It's hard enough administering a club of our numbers, as far as pure football is concerned, let alone having to spend the hours that we've had to on incident management. So that has improved it. But ultimately we are still in the hands of the investigator and the investigator's finding as to the resolution of the incident. In
the last few paragraphs of your statement, you make observations about how the burden of managing anti-Semitism in community sport should, in your view, be managed. Is that kind of centralised complaints process one way that you see would assist in relieving the pressure of parents and individual clubs having to do it all themselves?
Yeah, absolutely it would, and I think we're heading in that direction, certainly as far as the SMJFL is concerned, and its policies and the processes that they have in place now. The burden is definitely reduced, but to date it's been fairly and squarely on AJAX as a club to drive that, to continually push and request and talk to the pain points and talk to the fact that as a club it shouldn't be our responsibility to be the key player in finding a better way to resolve these issues. Certainly from the point of view of incidences after the fact, there's a much bigger piece here about prevention and education, and we've had positive conversations with the league about what resources that we can put in place to help them from an education standpoint and a policy standpoint. The league is administered primarily by young umpires as young as 13 or 14 years of age, sometimes younger than the players that they're actually umpiring. These are the people that are in control of these games. The umpires have a huge responsibility as far as control and management, keeping the game in order. It's a lot to ask of them to be able to understand the complexities of anti-Semitism, to know what it is when they hear it, to be able to control the situation, to have the courage to report a player if they hear it. So it certainly, from our perspective, there's a lot of work to be done, and we are happy to work with the league and to help give suggestions, but as far as the workload and the burden, it can't be AJAX's responsibility to manage or drive that. It needs to be owned by the leagues, and that goes all the way to the top. Peak sporting bodies really need to drive this agenda to give it the importance and understanding that it needs.
And we're a few rounds into the 2026 season. Any discernible trend in incidents so far this season?
What I'd say about this season, and we're 3 rounds into this season, obviously when the Bondi attacks occurred in December last year, the club members of the club executive were heartened by a lot of our club peers reaching out to us with messages of support. Unexpectedly, but very much appreciated. The league offered their support as well. So we were expecting that this year would be another year of difficulty. We've had a couple of incidences so far in the first 3 rounds, one as recently as Sunday. So I expect that the trend will continue. I hope it doesn't. But I think the challenge is around the education of the kids, because we can deal with sanction and we can deal with process, but unless steps are put in place to drive understanding and really make the players and participants, coaches, opposition parents, umpires, administrators of the game understand the significance of anti-Semitism and how it plays in sport. And my kids play other sports. I see the differences between a sport like cricket or basketball which is not to say that incidences don't occur there, but football is a volatile environment, and unless the education and the steps are put in place around prevention and learning, we will continue to see more incidences throughout 2026.
Thanks, Mr. Onas. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are excused.